What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel, back to Beyond. Today we're looking at a video that is made by Whitney Webb, left of screen. Oh, sorry, that way. And she's basically looking at the what's happening next year for 2026 with the Epstein Files and their links between Ghislaine Maxwell and the Clintons. So we don't know when the list is coming out. Will it ever see the light of day? How much of it will be redacted? We don't know. But yeah, this in this video, she sort of goes into it in detail. If you're new here, please like the video and subscribe. There's gonna be more videos on things that beyond this world.
Because I saw a headline about how Hillary and Bill Clinton are going to be subpoenaed about their relationship with Ghislaine Maxwell now, as they're trying to distract away about how they're not going to release the files, which obviously have something bad for both parties in them. Otherwise, we would probably have them. The big giveaway here about that, if the Clintons are subpoenaed and forced to testify or whatever, or if Ghislaine is asked about them, is that Republicans are not going to touch one very important aspect of the Epstein-Clinton relationship with a 10-foot pole, and that is Jeffrey Epstein's 17 visits to the Clinton White House between 1993 and 1995. They will not touch that. And there is a reason why mainstream media has worked so hard to have all the scandalous coverage of Epstein and Clinton be after Clinton left office. No focus on when he was in office. And the same is true also, I've argued in the past about Bill Gates, because they won't talk about his relationship with Epstein until he was no longer involved as chairman of Microsoft. So they want the
It's just
pressure off of Microsoft. They want the pressure off of what was Epstein doing at the Clinton White House, because it's really, I would argue, ultimately boils down to what I see as sort of the second coming of Iran-Contra in the mid-90s, same network, involved with this very crazy effort that's remembered as Chinagate today, but it really has a lot to do with US and Israeli intelligence, who, of course, were the bedfellows of Iran-Contra, and some of the connections they made to major Chinese weapons dealers and organized crime-like figures in Macau, and, weird things there that involved a lot of military technology.
I mean, guy like Maxwell's dad, Robert Maxwell, was a spy. So it all sort of comes together when you look at it. Um, which yeah, this rabbit hole it just keeps going down deeper and deeper, and that's why it's in their best interest that they do not want to release the files. They'd much rather have a pandemic scenario that again distracts the population away from certain names of individuals because yeah, it just keeps going deeper and deeper.
Technology transfer from the US to China. Israel very involved in this, and it was even, the CIA like acknowledged that in the early 90s, but nothing was done to really stop anything. And they don't really want to talk about that at all. Even though it involves China, it involves Clinton. You think it would be the perfect story for Trump. No, they won't touch it. And
What
I
about
write a lot about it very extensively in my book, Chinagate, if you'd like more detail, why that would be so bad for both parties. So, my thesis about Epstein in general is that he was working obviously most overtly for Leslie Wexner, but Leslie Wexner himself is enmeshed with this group that becomes rather tight knit later of oligarchs, really, these billionaires that all happen to have organized crime.
look at the Lizard King right there, bloody look at him, Zuckerberg, and then you got Jeff Bezos, and you got of course Elon Musk. The only person I don't see here is Bill Gates, and if you had all of them lined up together, these are the front men of the group that definitely calls the shots in the world. And I mean, he's built a bunker in New Zealand. Bezos, I'm not sure, but he's definitely built a bunker somewhere. And Musk, I'm not sure. I'm sure they've all got bunkers somewhere underground. If yeah, nuclear weapons were used at some point. Um, but yes, that very like this guy here is definitely a hybrid, and I'm going to do videos on hybrids and what that means. Go watch They Live. It's a very interesting movie, but it's really a documentary. And it talks about hybrids, and he's definitely one of them. I'm not sure if they've done anything with Bezos. He does look different in a couple of the new photos that I've seen of him lately. But then yeah, Elon Musk is very robotic in nature. Yes, he's probably on the spectrum of autism a little bit, but he's definitely not fully human at all.
Crime connections and are very interested in ethno philanthropy, I guess
Are you
I would
speaking of the
call it.
mega group?
Yeah, sure. And which Bronfman co-founded, well, Charles Bronfman, not Edgar Bronfman, but they obviously work closely together since they're brothers. They co-founded that with Leslie Wexner in 91, but it wasn't reported on until the Wall Street Journal covered it, I think in 1998 or
So it was
1997,
before
somewhere.
Robert Maxwell's death, but his code name was Mega, and then he dies in between those 2 points that you just talked about, doesn't he?
He dies in 1991, but I'm not sure because we
Oh.
don't know the month the mega group was created, but it was
Hmm.
created sometime in 91, so it's hard to know the exact overlap. But there was a spy scandal in DC, and the code name, it was a wiretap or something, I believe, of the Israeli embassy. And they were talking about getting information from someone whose code name was Mega. And so they were trying to look for like a mole in the government and they didn't find one. And then their source, I think it was the Washington Post or some mainstream media outlet like that that was reporting on it. And the Israeli they interviewed to sort of like explain away the scandal was Rafi Eitan, who had actually been Robert Maxwell's handler, and also Jonathan Pollard's handler
Oh, wow.
for Israeli intelligence. But he was running now defunct Israeli intelligence agency called Lakim that was mainly focused on science and technology espionage. I forget exactly when it was shut down, but basically he was the one kind of trying to explain it away. And it's very interesting you would roll out such a controversial figure to be the person to explain it away. And I think if you look at Rafi Eitan's career of espionage against the United States alone, can't really take his claims at face value at all. So the possibility, and I think it was first raised by Israel Shamir, writing for Executive Intelligence Review in like 2002, that, the Mega Group and Mega were linked somehow, positing that Mega was a code word for these billionaires, which is possible considering that they have these links to organized crime, specifically the syndicate that teamed up with US intelligence, how a lot of them have bankrolled prominent politicians. So, as an example, the Crown family were members of the Mega Group with Wexner and the Bronfmans, and the Crowns are also linked to organized crime, but they're out of Chicago. And they built up, for example, what is now General Dynamics, the military contractor, but also along with Wexner banking interests, created the modern day JP Morgan and put Jamie Dimon in charge of it. Of course, JP Morgan later gets involved in facilitating Epstein banking criminality, but the Crowns were also one of the forces that led to Barack Obama's early political career.
Yeah, that's crazy that yeah, that even is a thing because with a lot of these sort of politicians or even royal families, as she's just mentioned, it's just crazy how they're all computed together. And and yeah, organized crime, everything's sort of linked in a way that systematically is like sh a shield to them, and that's why the police, they try and crack down on certain individuals and certain things, small time criminals, but the big time players are the ones that are linked to the royals or politicians or what have you. It's extensive. It's extensive, and they're all going to protect their own.
Mhm.
It's
And that
fascinating, the
doesn't get
origins of
talked
that
about a
man's
lot.
career. Well, he got
Yeah.
called treasonous this week. That's new for him.
Well, I think that's only really coming out to distract from how they're not releasing the Epstein files and how do
Oh,
we
you
make.
noticed that too?
Yes. So Epstein was alleged to have created the Clinton Global Initiative or been part of a group that came up with the idea for it. Because, I mean, mainstream media will talk about Epstein's connection to Clinton philanthropy because obviously that's post presidency when all of that happens. And of course, the Clinton group has connections also with Terramar, trying to get that promoted and what have you. But also, as I'll be noting in the second part of my current series, someone who's very close to Trump and very affiliated and is part of the current administration also had a major, major, major involvement with Terramar and the UN stuff and this weird economic passport scheme involving Chinagate people and all sorts of very weird things. And his wife was on the flight logs while underage, among other things. So again, you don't want to go too into certain things because, as is the case with many things in the Epstein scandal, if you pull on a thread too far, it unravels and shows that this is a bipartisan issue and that we're run by corrupt oligarchs and their flunkies. I think for a long time, the way the powers that be have tried to manage the fallout from Epstein is depending on what partisan box you are in, you will either talk about Trump and Epstein or you will talk about Clinton and Epstein. And not enough people talk about both or try and understand what's really going on with the whole scandal and trying to figure out what it really teaches us and shows. Because Epstein, as I've noted before, really it comes down to middle management. He's managing portfolios for powerful people. He was doing that in the 80s and late 70s at Bear Stearns, and then he was doing that for Leslie Wexner and a lot of these other people that he became involved with, including, doing financial stuff for Netanyahu, having connections to Ehud Barak. A lot of these don't, like the Netanyahu tie, never gets covered. Only Ehud Barak, and actually Netanyahu used it as a lot of political attacks against Barak. And I think the last election where Barak was at one point a contender. I think it's interesting that right now there's a lot of efforts, I think, to manage the discussion about the Epstein scandal. A lot of people that have been rolled out in high-profile interviews weren't interviewed about Epstein before now.
You notice that too, huh?
Yeah,
I thought it
people
was just
like
me that noticed that.
Mike Benz, who previously, had an online alter ego named Frame Game, where he was trying to, I guess, allegedly saying anti-Semitic things and other things to fight anti-Semitism covertly or something. It's a strange phenomenon. People should look into it. And then he also worked for the State Department under Trump, which is interesting. And then Sagar Enjeti, former for several years fellow at the Hudson Institute. Other fellows include Nikki Haley, William Barr, Mike Pompeo, some well-connected figures. It's interesting. Daryl Cooper is on Tucker and tries to attribute my book to someone else who has never written a book. It's very strange. But, I think a lot of the people that are being promoted don't really talk about the bipartisan nature or leave certain things out. A lot of them, if they're in arguing about the intelligence ties, are trying to keep it just Epstein and Israel or trying to keep it in a very specific box. And, my book has come up in some of these discussions, but it's kind of frustrating to me because I feel like a lot of people that have brought it up aren't reading it because it's very clear that this is a transnational issue that has developed from the 40s, arguably a little bit earlier on. And what I'm trying to get people to focus on is that this is not a power structure we can vote our way out of. And that, Trump, Clinton, Epstein, they have a lot of the same people pulling their strings at the end of the day. We're not going to vote our way out of the problems we're having. And if people don't realize that it's oligarchs really running everything and that this is a us versus them thing, we are going to get pushed into this insane technocratic society that is being built for us by people that hung out with Jeffrey Epstein.
It's so true. There's no way that people in their right mind, they're like, we can't even vote ourselves out of here in Australia between the Labors and Liberals. It's a flawed system. And then we're talking globally. I mean, politicians are prostitutes. They're bought and they're used to whoever has the highest bid on them for their purposes. And a lot of it's multinational companies that buy politicians out for their own gain for business. But then also, like for this Epstein guy, he was a Mossad agent, just like Robert Maxwell, and they were doing things that yeah, we're yet to really um, hear the full story on. But they work in the shadows, and Epstein is now brought to light. He died in his cell, and it's just one of those things where the deeper you go, you know that really being a Mossad agent is just the tip of the iceberg. It's, as she said earlier, it's who's pulling the strings, like the Clintons, the Epsteins, Obamas, all the politicians beforehand, before Trump. They all have their handlers, they all have their owners, And just like Robert Kennedy, I mean JFK, sorry, John F. Kennedy, he was basically killed off because he didn't want to play ball, essentially. And you know, whether or not you believe we went to the moon or not, it's totally up to you with your perceptions on things. But yeah, we've been lied to all along. And unfortunately, the more I know, the less I want to know. It's a catch-22.
like Peter Thiel. And really, Palantir does what Epstein used to do. I argue this at the end of the book. Because in the past, sex blackmailing was necessary, but now it's not because they can find out everything about you from your online life and activities, sucking all the data up about you that has been put on the internet or through your phone or whatever. And Palantir collates all of that on behalf of all 18 US intelligence agencies. And it's problematic, among other things. And I've been rambling for a while, so
Yeah, there you go, guys. So yeah, good old Epstein and his Epstein list, which I don't know if we're gonna ever see. I'm not saying it's never gonna come out. I just believe that not all the names will be there. It'll be heavily redacted. A lot of the information will be redacted. And I'll be doing more sort of investigative videos on this just to see. But yeah, you can definitely tell that from what she's just said in 10 minutes, um, it runs a lot deeper than what we've been led to believe. But what do you guys reckon? Comment down below, like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one, guys.